I'm sure you're wondering, Levy, why on earth do you keep making your title so short? What the heck does your title mean? Well, we are celebrating International Chess Day. Today, July 20th, is International Chess Day or World Chess Day. And if you didn't know, don't worry. I didn't know about this until like 3 days ago. So get that hashtag trending on social media. That's kind of the goal. And hopefully we have some good chess that we can watch. It's World Cup. It's tiebreak day. And today, we have a lot of matchups that are going to be decided in either 25-minute, 10-minute, 5-minute, or Armageddon. First matchup is the matchup between Anish Giri and Nodirbek Abdusatorov, who is one of the strongest players from Uzbekistan. I believe he's 15 or 16 years old. He might actually be the strongest player from Uzbekistan, by the way, ranked number 1. Now, Anish didn't get much of an advantage against the guy's French defense in the classical portion, and in that portion, he played e5, known as the advanced variation. Here, he plays Tarrasch, knight d2, black attacks the center, and plays knight c6. This is very standard stuff. Although, after knight c6, there are some positions where you can take on d4 right away, but knight c6 is obviously completely fine. We have takes, bishop b5, pinning the knight to the king. And here, I was actually kind of happy to see Nodirbek play something that I've played before myself, but if I played it against Anish, it wouldn't have gone as well. Queen e7 check. And the point is that you make the bishop come back because Queen e2 is just a draw. I mean, black takes queens and there's nothing here. Stretching my neck. And now Queen c7. The bishop comes back, you play Queen c7, and now after takes, both sides begin the development of their pieces. The bishop is attacked and goes back. If you're wondering why Anish does not take on d5, it's because it gives black a little bit too much of an initiative. There's nowhere really for this queen to hide. If it goes here, bishop f5 comes, or bishop e6 or bishop g4, rook d8, and the position's just not very pleasant for white. White is always a move behind. So we have castles, knight e7, knight d4, and right here is the critical moment. White has a tiny microscopic hope of an advantage. And then he goes here. And his point of this is to transform the position. So now he trades a lot of pieces. And basically Anish says, look, man, I don't know whoever taught you endgames. Clearly in the Uzbekistani school of chess, endgames are like the 5th topic covered. I am from the Russian, Nepalese, Dutch school of chess. If you didn't know that, that's actually, well, Anish lives in the Netherlands. He's not Dutch by parent. But yeah, basically, white has like everything that you would want in a strategic advantage. None of these pawns can move up. They're all kind of targets. And yeah, white ideally would like to open up a flank and just win them. But black has something known as dynamic compensation. Like somehow black is still managing to create threats. And you might ask, why didn't Anish just play the move c3? Well, because b2 will never be guarded by a rook now because of the bishop, and black can play moves like a5, and you can't take because b2 falls. Keep that move in mind because that's what Nodirbek does. He just creates counterplay with the weakness. And he's like, actually, it's chapter 1 in the Uzbekistani school of chess. I don't actually think they had that conversation. I completely made that up. And you'll notice that Anish actually is doing a lot of things correctly. He's like trying to get a bishop trade where he could maybe even take with the pawn and just freeze these pawns completely. But Nodirbek is like just fast enough with his counterplay. Now this is attacking this. If you play b4, well, there's en passant, and now you can't take with the pawn because you lose your knight. And if you take this way, your pawns just look stupid here, and I'm going to take one of them. So let's not do that. c4, d4, b4, en passant, and the position is balanced. But you see, Anish kind of gave the kid this d-pawn. Like, I don't know, but okay. I mean, it's not going anywhere, but rook e2, all right? Knight d3, we come back. Black plays knight d6. Now, you're not going to go c5 here, as natural as it looks, because the knight just will jump into c3 and live there permanently, so you kind of don't like that. But rook a1 trying to trade a pair of rooks. The knight has jumped in, and that knight is very confidently standing on the e4 square. Rook e1, f5, so now the king is no longer in threat of being back rank mated. Anish plays g4, very natural move. If takes, rook e4, that's not complicated. And black can either reinforce the pawn or move the knight out of the way. And he decides to move the knight out of the way. Of course, the threat being knight f3 and also this. So what does white do? White plays king g2, preventing knight f3, but not preventing pawn takes pawn. And now Anish is just a pawn down. You know, having said that, his opponent does have double G pawns, but you gotta win one of the pawns back. I mean, you can't be down a pawn in a in a knight, rook, and pawn endgame that long, right? So Anish goes for the pawn and cuts this king off on the back rank. But now we have a problem. Because somehow Nodirbek got everybody coordinated and the rook is under pressure, the rook is pressuring this knight. So what do you do? Where do you move the knight? Apparently knight c5 is correct. And it's correct because you can create counterplay like this, and it's a little bit difficult for black to do anything about this d3 pawn. The way Anish did this by putting his knight on f4 and then doing this, there is a major difference in the positioning of the knight. And it's the fact that here black has a shocking move, and that shocking move is h5. First of all, you can take that pawn, which is what Anish did. Second of all, if you take on d3, check. If you take, I fork you, and if you go back, I fork you. You are stuck. Your own knight is caging in your king. This is crazy. So, because of that, and by the way, if you're confused, like knight takes d3, h4 now doesn't quite work because king takes pawn, but here there is this move. And somehow, white has no moves. Black is threatening knight f5, black is threatening some knight e2, maybe even g5 to lock in the king. Rook is pressuring everything, knight e2, I mean, you can't prevent everything. If you play a move like king f4, knight c2 also removes the rook from defending the knight. Rook g3, h4, and the rook has no way to protect this. And Nodirbek, Abdusatorov, ends up promoting his d-pawn. The pawn that Anish gave him a while back in hopes of winning it and scooping it up, but now the game is over because rook here and pawn push, and he went on to win 2-0, and he knocks out Anish Giri from the World Cup. Yeah. That is not a way I expected to start today's recap. This matchup between Maria Muszczuk and Anna Ushanina, both grandmasters from Poland. Wow, that is not what I meant to say at all. I meant to say Ukraine. All right, the Ukrainian flags are right there, and these are two very strong players, and they're from Ukraine. But my brain was like, no, you're not going to say Ukraine. You are going to say the word Poland now. Thank you. Okay, Ukraine. And this is their 8th game, or 7th game. So it was 1-1, then it was 1-1, then it was 1-1. This is game 7, which means it's a blitz game. And we have a Sicilian defense. We have something known as the Taimana variation. But it quickly becomes like a Scheveningen, which I don't know how to pronounce, but just bear with me. Super imbalanced position. Many times you'll see white playing like f3, queen d2, long castle in Sicilians. That is one plan. And another plan is to play like this. To castle your king, and sometimes even play moves like g4, g5, f5, f6, take bishop, take king, even though it's illegal, etc. And what does black do in these positions? Black sets up a central spike of pawns, and then black will play on the queen side with b5. I mean, this is like vintage Sicilian defense stuff. Let's see what happens. Pawn to a3, because you need to deal with pawn to b4. Black plays bishop b7 and white plays queen g3. Now this looks like a blunder of a pawn, except for a pawn you blunder mate. Not a very fair trade. Rook d8, rook e1. Rook does not need to be aligned. You don't need to copy your opponent. In fact, you want to go here to line up this in the future potentially, or this, and then push, etc. Black plays rook d7. White decides to put the bishop on d3, queen d8, queen h3, and white is like a move away. If white plays e5, the game is over because you threaten mate, and you threaten the knight. So what does black do? Black plays g6. Now, g6 is something known as a hook. It's a target, it's a pawn in front of your castled position, which can be attacked with a move like f5, which is exactly what white does, because now you are guaranteed something. If you stick to this plan, it's not necessarily terrible, although actually the computer does think it's terrible. I was gonna say like knight h5, but the engine sees d e5, bishop e5. Oh, of course, h5. What? Yo, how about you shut up, computer? How about that? Anyway, e5 doesn't look terrible, but even a move like knight h5 in some positions just stops the attack because g4 is just simply illegal because of that bishop. So white plays f5, black chooses to lock the position, and now the bishop comes back, and you're just not going to stop me from taking here. And that move does happen. in a little bit of time. First, white improves the position with bishop h6. Now you got a choice. Do you give me the rook or not? In fact, the computer wants to sack the rook. It thinks the bishop is too strong. Black is not the computer and does not want to give away the rook. Knight d5, and now that bishop has been dealt with, which means that g4 is going to probably happen if necessary. Okay? Black plays bishop f6. White plays queen g4, just adding a little bit of pressure here and actually threatening to take. For example, let's just say like here, after take, bishop takes g6, you can resign because the queen is going to get in and destroy everything. So that's the threat. Black plays bishop g7, trying to trade off one of white's attacking pieces, and white first does this, and then continues with the belligerent demolition of the king side. Now white has 1, 2, 3, 4 attackers versus 1, 2, 3 defenders. You can even count this one, but white is stronger. This attack is just stronger because black cannot defend. Black does not have the right coordination to defend. It's very rare that you have an equal amount of defenders as attackers and the attacking side still succeeds, because the way that black's position is set up, everything is barely hanging on. For example, this knight is just hanging, so the knight comes to f4, right? But now this. That actually didn't save the knight at all, because if pawn takes, rook e8. And the same can be said for going back to f6. It looks like you're totally safe, except I just take. Here, and if here I take your king. If here I take your king, so that's illegal, right? So knight f4, and well, now we go to the process of simplification. Now, Maria's up two pawns. So if she wants, she can trade everything and get an endgame. She also can just deliver checkmate. She chooses to trade everything by force like this, and boom. 6 pawns versus 4, you're gonna win unless all your pawns are stacked on the A file. And you know, she pushes her pawns. Very famous coordination of pawns. King can't take, you go here. And now that the king is frozen guarding over there, you just bring the pawns and then bring the king. And at some point you use your pawn majority, and black resigned in view of, in this position, you have to find the right win. If you play king f5, you might actually be able to get away with going there, but you might also just accidentally blunder this. Like, for example, king e6. Yeah, it's actually still winning for white. Yeah, it's still winning, but, I mean, it's just ridiculous. Yeah, h7, look at this. You would need to find this. This is how you would need to win this game. Queening, and then you queen, and then you give mate before they can queen. But don't do that. Just break with the pawn. Break with the pawn, take the pawn, and push. That's all you got to do. And she ends up winning. Took her 8 games. 1 game before the Armageddon. Next game I'd like to show you is my man, Pragnananda Ramesh Babu from India. I don't think he knows he's my man. I'm gonna call him my man anyway. My man Prag versus the gentleman who the comments have been viciously debating how to pronounce this name, Michał Krasenkov. I hope that was right. I hope I did a good job. If I made the Polish people proud. If not, how do you say sorry in Polish? I should have looked this up. I'm sorry. All right, these two had a bloodbath yesterday. So naturally, Prag has to play b3. And we get a super imbalanced position right off the bat. I mean, I don't even know what's going on here. You can lose the game in like 1 move. Queen takes d4. Black resigns because you got to go here. But black plays knight d7. Prag takes and plays knight f3. Bishop g7. And white is not really committing to a castling. But white does end up castling. But before we get to the castling situation, have a look at this position. Strategically speaking, what is the most exploitable square in the black position? Black position meaning this rectangle. You can already find it, by the way. What is the most exploitable square? It's this one, because the king is there. No, get out of my class. d6. d6. And if you can get a firm grasp on d6, from there you can exert all pressure. How do you find a square like that? No pawn has a prospect of protecting it. It's very rare you can find a square like that. See, all these squares, pawns can cover them. But somehow the way black has played this opening, right? And you notice what Prag is doing. Prag is like very slowly b4, kicks the knight out. Maybe he'll play c5. For now, he castles and plays this, gets his queen out of the way. Queen b3, knight e4. You see? Something's cooking up on that square. And just in general, the dark squares kind of over here might be some real estate. So he plays bishop back to b2 to pressure the center pawn, and here it comes. Look at this. How are you gonna deal with that? I mean, that is not good. Bishop c3. If b takes c5, bc5. Your queen's not coming anywhere, and Pragg anticipates that his queen will be attacked, and that's why he played bishop c3. So now there is no target, and bishop a5 is always a possibility. I mean, he's putting in the work right now. e5 is a weakness, a5, and now that diagonal is a weakness. This bishop is just miserable. And the engine already gives plus 3.5 here, which is insane. Total equal material, but plus 3.5 by virtue of the positional drawbacks. And oftentimes when you have a dominant positional advantage, there is a tactic lurking. There is a tactic in this position. Knight takes e5. And after bishop takes e5, there is rook takes d7. Queen d7, bishop e5, threatening check, and the rook. And white is completely winning. But rather than that, Pragg just says, I want to improve all my pieces to the max. And truthfully, it's really difficult to argue with the guy, because, like, black can't move. And as I said, in every position where you're strategically dominating, there's that knockout punch, which kind of breaks the rules. Oh, I'm not supposed to push pawns in front of my king? To hell with your rules! G4, what are any of these bums gonna do to me? What are they gonna do? They can't move. None of them can move. All right? Pawn takes G4, and you would think that you've opened your own king, but the white king is saying, call an ambulance, call an ambulance. But not for me. King G2, rook H1, someone's king is in trouble, and it ain't Pragg. This position, which is completely even in material, in fact, Krasnikov is up 1 point of material. This position is plus 10. It's looking like your games. Knight back to f8, and Pragg now begins the execution process with knight takes f6, bishop f6, rook f6, knight f6, bishop e5. And Krasnikov is now up 4 points of material, and it's still plus 15 because you cannot deal with the belligerents. And I really like the way this game ends. Pragg brings all his pieces, and we end the game very peacefully. We end the game with the move queen c3. Because you just can't prevent anything that white is doing. Look at this position. I mean, this king is just, like, he's just being taunted in the corner. All the pieces are like, ha ha ha, look at you over there. You know, there's a really disgusting computer move here. If Pragg played this, I would've, oh my, queen b2. Oh no, my queen! Rook takes b2 runs into rook takes h7 checkmate. That is mate, folks, because of the way white's pieces are set up. Queen b2 would have been one of the most savage ways to end the game, but he ends it with queen c3. He ends up knocking out Krasnikov, and Pragg moves on to round number 4 of the World Cup. And the next matchup is also based out of India, and this one was pretty wild, my friends. This matchup was 1-0 Vidit in classical chess. Then it was 1-1 after Adiban won on demand, as they say. They drew their next 2 rounds. Then it was Vidit winning in the 10-minute, and then it was Adiban winning in the 10-minute again on demand in a 99-move game. They drew the first game of Blitz, or yeah, I think it was Blitz. And that resulted in game number 8. So this is their 8th game, right? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. This is their 8th game. Adiban's got the white pieces. If he wins, he makes it to the next round. If Vidit wins, he makes it to the next round. And if nobody wins, they play an Armageddon. Well, I wouldn't be showing you this game if it didn't have, didn't have a winner. So Adiban plays b3. And what's funny is that this is called the Agincourt Wimpy system. No joke. Wimpy. W-I-M-P-E-Y. Wimpy system. Now, we have d5, bishop b2. And basically what white is going for here is at some point to get an isolated pawn position. So for example, if black plays bishop 2e7, we get takes, takes, bishop e2, something like this, and play goes on. But the way that Adiban plays this, it allows this, this, and bishop b4 check. And after bishop c3, a5, black is actually the one calling the shots. But we have a retreat, knight d2, castles, here, and castles. And when I came to the game, I was on live game, right? I was on live game, and I saw this position. I was like, okay, only white can really win this position. It's an isolated pawn. Black has a slightly overextended a-pawn. I mean, objectively, the position is always balanced, but I like white's position. At any point, white can take on f6 and take on d5, and then that's exactly what the beast did. He won himself a pawn. I was like, oh, beast is up a pawn. However, black has the bishop pair, but beast is up a pawn. Queen back to d4. I was thinking bishop d3 here also possible. Like, the more you trade when you're up, the better. Now you're just a clean pawn up, right? He goes for a queen trade. Vidit says no thank you. He goes for a queen trade. Vidit says no thank you. He goes for a trade of knight versus bishop. Vidit says no thank you. He goes for a trade of bishops. Now Vidit really doesn't have a choice, because if Vidit plays the move bishop d3, I mean, like, what are we doing here? Like, oh, bishop, okay, then I'll take. Now I'm completely winning. So this is no good. So bishop c5, you have to trade with me. But even though this rook is somehow under pressure, black has a lot of activity. Black is down an e-pawn. That is black's deficiency in the position. That black doesn't have a pawn on e6. But it's not that noticeable because black is so active. Black just has a lot of stuff going for him. And the only way white can win this game is by trading everything and having an advantage in a pawn endgame. So obviously rook d1, takes, but now bishop a3. Wait a minute. He just won a pawn, but rook d8. Also queen c8. So Vidit wins the pawn, but allows an infiltration on his back rank. Now that does look pretty terrifying. Rook h8 is mate. How do you stop it? By moving your queen. Queen back to c2, queen d8, queen e4 check. They trade rooks. Ariban didn't have to do that. He could have gone here first. Then, I mean, I instinctively like putting the black king on g6. It just looks dumb there. And then you play a move like h3 and maybe try to figure it out. Easier said than done. Instead, he goes back here, they trade, and basically Ariban must have been like, all right, we're going to make a draw. Maybe I'll try to play this. We'll see what happens. G4, G6. Let me bring my king up a little bit. Let me just bring my pawns up. And at some point, Vidit flipped the switch. And Vidit kind of said, yo, I have 2 pawns over here, and you have 1. You know what that means? That's called a queenside majority. And Ariban's like, can you please stop talking to me during the game? I know what that's called. Queen a8 check. And Vidit here plays a funny move. He doesn't take, because then he would have lost this pawn and probably lost the game. Instead, he gives this check and wins the b pawn. Now we have db or bd, whichever one you want to go first. And who is going to play this for a win? Uh-oh. Wait a second. What? Whoa, Vidit. Hey, Vidit, where are you going? Vidit's bringing his king to help the pawn. Ariban gives away the pawn on d4. We have 3-3, but one guy has a b pawn. There's only one way white can save this. Perpetual check or winning this pawn. Pushing this. That was 3 things, not 2 things. But it's okay. And very quickly, it's like, wait a minute. You can't stop this pawn at all. Queen b4, threatening b1. So at some point, you're going to have to play queen to b1. Now I check you. The game is over. And Vidit Gujarati, in the second game of Blitz, wins a queen and 3 endgame by the slimmest of margins and eliminates the beast from the World Cup. And it was a crazy sight at the end of their game. They both literally went like this. Like, both of them. One out of relief of victory, one out of like, I can't believe I just messed this up. I really would have liked to see both of them advance. It's a shame that they had to play against each other, but they really gave us an incredible fight. But they were not even the last game of the day. The last game of the day was Maxime Vachier-Lagrave versus David Paravian. This one was 4-4. This is Armageddon. MVL has 5 minutes. David Paravian has 4 minutes. There is no bonus time unless they make it to the 60th move. So 5-4. And if black draws, black wins. Bishop b5, anti-Sicilian, closed Sicilian. We don't have d4. g6, we have takes, and f4. Very imbalanced position already. Doubled pawns. Bishop for knight been traded. Black gonna try to attack the center. Moves like bishop g7 on the way, and d5. Now d5 is unique. I'm much more familiar with knight h6 and f5 ideas. This is a very typical way of playing this position as well. Or d5 and then trying to bring the knight into the game like that. But we have d5. And MVL plays this. This is a super sneaky move. Basically, you're like, yo, come and take my pawn so you have this stupid structure. And that's actually exactly what Paravian did. And then he played this move, and it looks like he just blundered a pawn. But he didn't. He absolutely did not blunder a pawn. This is apparently some sort of weird theory, according to the machine. And here black goes here, attacking f4. It's not so easy to defend. For example, let's say you bring your knight back out of danger. Black has a tremendous amount of compensation here. You get crisscross applesauce, that's number 1, with the bishops. You can barely move a piece. What can you move here, right? So this is not the easiest thing in the world. You play a move like d4. Black has moves like queen a5 check, bishop d4, queen c5. I mean, your center is quickly collapsing. Maybe it's not. Oh, I'm sorry. It's not queen a5 right away. You have to play this first, and then this at least comes with check, and then you win this back. I apologize. But Paravian plays queen d6, and the difference is now white loses nothing. Now white is just not down a pawn at all. We see this all the time in Armageddon games. Blunders in the first 10 to 15 moves. It's just such a nervy game. And all MVL has to do now is just vibe. He just puts his knight on e5. Paravian within the first 15 moves after being 4-4 with MVL is completely lost. What he tries to do is to play the move c5, but MVL calls the bluff on that too and is just 2 pawns up. And he's got 4 on 1. That's not going to cut it. But what's also not going to cut it is that there is a kingside attack brewing. Now, having said that, MVL does give away the e-pawn, but I guess he did it in order to play the bishop to d4, and this just looks horrifying for black. You're about to get absolutely butchered, like this, right? So f6, and yeah, f6 runs into a really nice shot. Pause here if you'd like to find it. There it is. If bishop c6, bishop b6, like this, x-ray, and if queen, my arrow drawing skills, what was that? And if queen c6, well then rook e7. It's a deflection, sacrifice. And once this is fallen, everything will fall. And yeah, this was just a violent game. Here, there is another very nice move for white. You can pause here and try to find it. Give you a few seconds. I've been sipping on my last sip of water for like 5 minutes now. Boom. All you gotta say, just boom. If queen b7, queen f6. The threat is to go check. It's not mate, because then you would lose your queen. It's check here, check, and winning the queen. Black plays rook e7, and now we have check, 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 takes. Very nice move. Queen is hanging. That queen's hanging, but so is that queen. And Maxime Vacher-Lagrave, in violent fashion, sends David Paravian. Well, actually, I was going to say sends him home, but he's Russian, and it's in Sochi, so I don't know if he's from Sochi, but he could literally live, like, down the street. Having said that, if he's not from Sochi, it's probably going to be a long flight or a long train ride. Very tense match. David Paravian, a super strong player, but congratulations to Maxime. I'm sure he had the entire country of France on the edge of its seat. And that takes us, folks, to our favorite part of the day, which is where we take a look at the standings. Here are the standings. On the men's side, Carlsen versus Wojtaszek from Poland. Dubov versus Yesipenko. Back row Pankratov from Russia. Piorun versus Sindarov, the wonder kid, 15 years old, crushing everybody. Korobov Grishuk. Puyeidani from Iran, crushing it, versus Duda, who's a beast. Zhang versus Vidit. That's an exciting matchup. Zhang knocked out Grandelius. Vasiv versus Nodirbek. This is a matchup of pretty big underdogs to get to this point, as Vasiv has knocked out David Navarro, which is pretty wild. That's pretty wild stuff. And I mean, Nodirbek just knocked out, Giri, so WTF. Kovalev, Fedoseev, nothing crazy. Ivic, my man from Serbia, we will definitely feature a game of his should he succeed. Andreykin, Hare Krishna Tsabatabey. Oh, I forgot to mention, Haik Martirosyan, the teenager, I believe he's 18, 19 years old, knocked out Mamidyarov. The only reason I didn't get to show this game, it was 100 moves, 100 move game, but he did beat him in a 100 move game, and he's moving on, and I did want to give him some time here. Yo, Prague has to play MVL, bro. That is, good luck to Prague. Hope he does well. Karyakin, Artemyev, all Russian matchup here, 2 Russians, and Shanklin versus Jumabayev. Shanklin, another American who knocked out Alexander Areshenko and Badur Jabava. He's having a pretty solid run. On the women's side, Goryachkina Stefanova, or is that Stefanovna? No, Stefanova. Kashlinskaya Sadvakasova, Zanidze versus Shuvalova. Shuvalova is one of the strongest women in the world, one of the strongest junior players in the world as well. In fact, the #1 junior female in the world, I think under 20 or under 18 years old. Elizabeth Petz versus Anna Muschuk, and then her sister Maria versus Kostyanyuk. That's a big matchup. And perhaps the biggest surprise in the women's section is Alsobayeva, who is from Kazakhstan, knocked out Bela Kotanishvili from Georgia, and Jansai Abdumalik, both grandmasters. And I think Bibisara is like an IM, and she's like 2380. So big story there developing. We'll see how she does versus the number 1 player in the number 2 player in the field, or number 3, Lagno, because Goryachkin is number 1. Anyway, folks, now that I'm done saying all those names in Russian, with the Russian accent, I would like to once again wish you all happy International Chess Day. Some of you will watch this. It won't even be International Chess Day anymore. It'll be July 21st. Some of you will watch this on July 19th. If that's even possible. And I will see you all tomorrow for round number 4. Peace out! Get out of here.